In the end of this week's parsha, we have the story how Yitzchak calls Yaakov, he benches him, he blesses him, he tells him not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, he should go to Padan Aram, marry one of the daughters of Lavan, how Hashem should bench him and give him plenty of brachos. Yitzchak sends off Yaakov, Yaakov goes to Padan Aram, to the house of Lavan. Then the pasuk says, Vayar Esav, Esav saw that Yitzchak blessed Yaakov and sent him off to Padan Aram to take a wife from there and giving him a bracha, and that he commanded him not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. The pasuk goes on, Vayishma Yaakov. Yaakov listened to his father and his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. And then the pasuk says a second time, Vayar Esav. Esav saw that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of Yitzchak, his father. So Esav goes to Yishmael and he marries one of the daughters of Yishmael. On the words Vayishma Yaakov, that Yaakov heard, he listened to his parents. So Rashi says the following, Mechuber, this is connected to the previous things that were just discussed in the previous psukim, in the previous pasuk. And Rashi enumerates, Vayar Esav, that Esav had seen, Ki Beirach Yitzchak, that Yitzchak had benched Yaakov, and that he sent him to Padan Aram, and that Yaakov had listened to his parents and gone to Padan Aram, and that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, so he too went to Yishmael. So the Rebbe says, simply, what Rashi seems to be saying is that we shouldn't think that Vayishma Yaakov is that the Torah is now telling us the events that Yaakov had actually listened to his father, because this clearly said already earlier that Vayelech, that Yaakov went to Padan Aram. Rather, the pasuk is telling us that this is all part of what Esav saw. But the questions then are, number one, why is it Noigeya? Why is it relevant? The whole Arichas, all of the details of what Rashi tells us of what Esav had seen. Rashi could have just said briefly that Vayishma Yaakov is connected to the pasuk, the previous pasuk, to that which Esav had seen. Question number two. Why is it that amongst all the details that Rashi does mention that Esav saw, he mentions, he misses out mentioning, he omits seemingly a very, very crucial, important detail. The detail that Yitzchak had commanded Yaakov not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Question number three. Rashi is coming to explain the words Vayishma Yaakov, that it's connected to the previous pasuk. So seemingly, Rashi should have just mentioned those few details that say in the previous pasuk. Before Vayishma Yaakov, why is Rashi, part of the Rashi on Vayishma Yaakov, Rashi is saying, Esav saw all these things, and he also goes ahead and says that Vayishma Yaakov, that Yaakov listened. Why is it relevant to say this Vayishma Yaakov? That's the whole point Rashi was making, that this is connected to the previous pasuk. And furthermore, Rashi even says even the things that say in the pasuk after Vayishma Yaakov. Rashi continues with the next psukim, that Esav saw that Roy's b'nois Canaan, that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father. And even more than that, Rashi goes on and says, and then he himself went to Yishmael. These are things clearly that say in the pasuk itself. Why does Rashi have to go ahead and say all of this? It sounds like it's only after Rashi told us that Vayishma Yaakov is connected to the previous pasuk, now we'll understand what it means that Esav went to Yishmael, and that's why Rashi is concluding with this. So we need to understand how this works. In order to explain this, says the Rebbe, we first need to understand why the Torah uses twice the words Vayar Esav. It first says Vayar Esav, and enumerates a number of things, as we said, and then it says again Vayar Esav, and enumerates some more things. So the Rebbe says these two Vayar Esavs are referring to two different types of Re'iyah, two different types of ways of seeing. The first Vayar is simply saying things that Esav saw and observed what is happening between different people, between Yitzchak and Yaakov. Esav sees how Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov, how he sent him off to Padan Aram, etc. The second time Vayar Esav, where it says he sees Kirois, B'nois Canaan, etc., this is already saying things that Esav is understanding, in his own mind, things that are going to be relevant to him as well, not only things that he's observing on the outside. In other words, since he sees that Roy's b'nois Canaan, that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, that's why he is going out to Yishmael to get a wife. But the question is, seemingly the whole point of the story is to tell us why Esav went to Yishmael. So why are all of the previous things that Esav saw relevant to the story? That Esav saw that he benched Yaakov and that he sent him off to Padan Aram. Seemingly the only thing that would have been relevant from that previous Vayar is the most important detail, that he commanded him not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, and yet again it's specifically that detail that Rashi missed out. Says the Rebbe, the explanation is, really the whole arichos in these psukim is coming to clarify something in regards to Esav's conduct. We know that Esav, what he's trying to show and prove is that he too is fulfilling what his father wants. But here's the problem. Yitzchak didn't only tell Yaakov not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. He also sent him specifically to Padan Aram to get a wife over there. So why is it that Esav is only fulfilling the detail of not taking from Bnei Canaan, but he's not fulfilling the detail of going to Padan Aram? In order to explain this, this is what the Torah is telling us, these two Vayar Esavs, the two things that Esav saw. Each one of these are going to be explaining part of what Esav did. The first Vayar is going to explain why he himself is not going to Padan Aram, and the second Vayar is going to explain why he is going to Yishmael. How does this work? The fact that Yitzchak sent Yaakov to Padan Aram, in Esav's opinion, was not because this is the only place where Yaakov could find a good shidduch, but rather that Yitzchak saw that this is the place where Yitzchak's brachas to Yaakov are going to be fulfilled. This is the Keli, the place where the Yaakov could get the brachas. And as the pasuk says clearly, that Esav saw that Yitzchak had given Yaakov the brachas, and that he sent him to Padan Aram, repeating again this idea that he gave him the brachas. And this is why Esav thinks that this has nothing to do with him. He's not the one getting those brachas there. And therefore he himself does not go to Padan Aram. The second Vayar, this is already connected to the concept of not taking a wife from the daughters of Canaan. With this, Esav understood that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, and that's something relevant to him, and that's why he is going to Yishmael. Now we can understand the whole arichos in Rashi. After Rashi says that Vayishma Yaakov, the Yaakov heard, is connected to Vayar Esav, Rashi wants to clarify why it is in fact that by first Vayar, in the pasuk it does say that Vayetzav Olav, that Yitzchak commanded Yaakov not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Now seemingly, according to the way we explained it before, that first Vayar is only coming to explain why Esav is not going to Padan Aram. So seemingly this idea of not taking from the daughters of Canaan is not relevant to this first Vayar. That should have been after the second Vayar. And this is why Rashi, when he says the words Mechuber, that it's connected to the previous pasuk, he specifically tells us what it is connected to, which part of the previous pasuk it's connected to. That it's connected to Kiveirach Yitzchak. That Yitzchak, that Esav had seen. And Vayishma Yaakov is connected to this idea. That, again, that Esav had seen that Yitzchak had given him a bracha, and that he sent him to Padan Aram. And as a result of that, Yaakov went to Padan Aram. And he's specifically omitting the point that Yitzchak told him not to take a daughter from the daughters of Canaan. Because Rashi is trying to emphasize that in Esav's opinion, this tzivui, this command, is not connected to the fact that Yaakov is going to Padan Aram. This is more connected, this tzivui is going to be more connected to the second Vayar, to that which Esav is going to apply to himself, that the daughters of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, and that's why he himself is also not going to marry from the daughters of Canaan. Now we'll also understand why Rashi brings this detail of Roy's B'nai Canaan after that Yaakov goes to Padan Aram. Because the reason that in the pasuk it says, Vayetzav Olav, in that first Vayar, in the first thing that Yosef sees, in that pasuk it does say that he commanded him not to take from the daughters of Canaan. Well, first of all, that's practically the way it happened. That Yitzchak does command Yaakov not to take from the daughters of Canaan before Yaakov goes to Padan Aram. It's also because, in truth, Yaakov did go to Padan Aram for this reason as well, not to take from the Bnei Canaan. But as far as Esav is concerned, and this is what Rashi is coming to explain, what it is that Esav saw, as far as Esav is concerned, this Vayetzav, all of this command that Yitzchak gives to Yaakov is all going to be related to the second Vayar, to the things that Esav is going to apply to himself, that he too shouldn't marry from the Bnei Canaan. Says the Rebbe, now we'll understand why Rashi doesn't only bring the details to what Vayishma Yaakov, what Yaakov heard is connected, but he also goes on and says that Yaakov listened and he went to Padan Aram, and that Bnei Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, etc. Because again, in Esav's mind, the idea of Roy's Bnei Canaan is not connected to the fact that Yaakov went. Yaakov went, that finishes one part of the story. Now the fact that Bnei Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father, that's going to be connected to the second Vayar, which is going to impact Esav to go to Yishmael. And that's why Rashi concludes that he too went to Yishmael in order that it should be clear that this Vayitzav Olav, not to take from the daughters of Canaan, is not connected to what Yaakov is listening to his father. This is connected rather to what's impacting Esav to go to Yishmael. Says the Rebbe, the fact that Rashi omits this Vayitzav, that Yitzchak commands Yaakov not to take from Bnei Canaan, when he's enumerating the things that Yaakov had listened to, had heard, is not only because that command technically is shaykh also to the second Vayar, to what Esav sees and applies to himself, whereas the first details of Yitzchak benching Yaakov and Yaakov going to Padan Aram is only shaykh to Yaakov. But furthermore, in Esav's view, this command of Yitzchak not to take from Bnei Canaan is totally not connected to Yaakov's going at all. Meaning to say, in Esav's mind, Yaakov was only going to get the brachas, and he's not going because of the command not to marry from the daughters of Canaan. So this too is connected now to the way Esav is going to Yishmael. Because in his mind, not only isn't he no worse than Yaakov, that he too is not marrying from the daughters of Canaan, but in his mind he's even better. That Yitzchak, Yaakov is not going for the purpose of not marrying Bnei Canaan, and he is going to fulfill the desire of Yitzchak, even though he wasn't even commanded. But again, of course, as we said before, Yaakov definitely did it because of this tzivui as well.